Day 3 of Admitted Student Week. We'll go ahead and get started. We're recording this session so that those who aren't able to join us live can watch later, but for those of you who are live with us today, welcome and thank you so much. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Sarah Birch. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Recruitment for the Brown School. And I have the very distinct pleasure of getting to introduce one of our most esteemed faculty members here at the Brown School, Professor Jack Kirkland, and his team who help him with the East St. Louis immersion course. They're going to talk to you all about the course and about what it means to address institutional racism as a student at the Brown School. So with that, I'm going to turn it to you, Professor Kirkland, and your team, if you all want to introduce yourselves. And then, of course, if you're watching live and have questions, put them in the chat and I'll be happy to read them aloud and have the crew answer.
Very good. So we're on. Excellent. So I'd like to introduce two of my team members that are in, and one is Jack Kirkland and Shirley Emerson, and they can just introduce themselves, and I'll have them to chat a little while later on as we get into the dialogue here. So Shirley, I'll let you start briefly, a sentence or two.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kirkland. Good morning, everybody. Happy to see all of you. I work with Professor Kirkland and been working with him. He's my mentor. I went to WashU, I went to Brown, but with this particular class, I'm the class facilitator. And so some of the things that I will be doing is talking about the various institutions, particularly my area is community and community organizing. And so I will be sharing a lot in the class about that. But I'm happy to be here and happy to see all of you today.
Zach?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jack Kirkland. I use he, him, his pronouns. I graduated from the Brown School last summer, I suppose, 2020, and have had the privilege of knowing Professor Kirkland and Shirley for about 3 years now. And I was in I think it was the winter immersion cohort of 2019. So that was the first winter one that Professor Kirkland had. And yeah, I currently work with the city of St. Louis. So I have some like governmental nonprofit tie-ins and look forward to talking with you all. Thanks again.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, good afternoon. This is a real pleasure, an opportunity to chat with you. I'm kind of sorry that we can't do it eyeball to eyeball, and you can come up and talk with me after the session. But I want to just give you some information, some about me and some about the class that I teach and about this particular class. This immersion that you're here to listen ideas about is a complementary that I added to the social economic development concentration in 2016. It's really a composite and a pictorial overview of the concentration. And we spend a week traveling, looking around the whole metro area, and we are in a small bus, and it's an exciting and well, it's a pulsating event. And we actually have the opportunity to stop on many occasions and spend a session with people who are specialists in their area of significance. And as we do this, we go into segregated areas, we go into isolated areas, we go into the rich, we go into the poor, we do a tour, and it happens different sections of the metro area. And I call it the good and the bad and the ugly. And you really, it's one thing, you know, to hear and think about poverty, but it's another thing to really see it, to be up close, to be in the skins of the people as they tell you about this whole situation that literally boggles and destroys the individual's ability to get on with what we call the best of life. And as you know, I am the founder of the concentration. It's and you do know you're in a school where the only concentration that exists is here. And so I know that's why you're all here. I see you. And so what I call the concentration is the other face of social work. Social work has two faces. Obviously, it's the traditional face. When someone says, I'm a social worker, you say, well, okay. And they think they know what you do. But when you tell them that you're a social worker and you do social economic development, they say, what's that? You know, and so I want you to be in a position to be able to tell them what that is. And so I conceived the idea of this concentration when I came to Washington University in 1970. That's a little before some of you got into the world. But anyway, that's when I came and as I became the co-founder, actually the co-founder of what is known as the Black Studies program. Now, you have to imagine along with me that in 1970, and if you were on campus of this beautiful university, you'd see the huge size of it. And then you'd wonder, are you really telling me what's real? You mean when you got here, there were less than 20 Black people on the campus? The answer is yes, less than 20 Black people. And so when you look at that, you begin to ponder how could this have happened? So I guess maybe I can say as I look into the audience here, I don't see a great number of Blacks here, but if you're here, you know, you can thank me and I appreciate your thanks. So I've got to this position in a route that's somewhat not regular. Actually, I served in the capacity, which was, and you'll find out if you are in this concentration, that I worked in the capacity of serving as a manager, a campaign manager for a man who became a state senator. And when he became a state senator, he recommended me to become the director of transportation for the state of Missouri. And as I became the director and obviously a member of the governor's cabinet, I also became a lobbyist. And so these are some of the kinds of things that you will hear me talk about. And I know if you've been listening, you know that transportation is a very significant part of the society. As a matter of fact, we're now talking about $4 trillion for transportation, for the development and the upkeep of transportation system in this country. $4 trillion. Now, my budget was a trifle smaller than that, but I know something about what all of this is about. So it was there where actually I had confirmed for me some thoughts, hunches, and they were that transportation plays a very major role and doing some of the things that really upset a great number of low-income communities. And they do that by having the power of eminent domain. And as they use eminent domain, they are constantly involved in urban renewal. They're involved in I would say the relocation of people, and they typically relocate in areas that are poor. So you've heard the expression urban renewal. I call that Black removal because that happens very, very, very often. And but if you were to talk with someone in transportation who are involved in such activities, they would simply call this economic development. And it is. It's economic development. But economic development has no conscience. It really doesn't care who it moves, but it certainly is very obvious to most of us that it's moving people who have the least amount of footing, the least amount of capability of maintaining their ground. So I then, in the origination of this concentration, called it social economic development. And the fact that it's social economic development means that you're concerned about the consequences. You're concerned about the impact. And as a result of that concern, I said that, yes, you need to have advancement. You need to have progress, but you have to do it with a conscience. You have to do it with a heart. And so I made the concentration a different name from just simple economic development, and I call it the social economic development. And in doing that, you can see, as I was saying earlier, that you're talking about something that has a different impact, a different thrust in service. And you actually can see another face. There's a different face that this particular name should give you. Self-esteem is a very good and a very impactful mode of operation. And the recipient acknowledges and sees this as an excellent way of helping. And it's a traditional social work. It does the kinds of things that help people more adapt to their community and to develop greater adequacy to be able to perform in their rigors of life. The face that I'm talking about, the face of social work, is involved in economic uplifting. That's the emphasis. How do you lift the individual? And how do you lift the community? How do you change institutions and situations which impede, halt social improvement and social ascendancy? And that's the great emphasis that is placed on social economic development. And you're all familiar, of course, or you wouldn't be here, with the fact that the wealth gap between the rich and the poor is staggering. But the wealth gap between Blacks and whites in America is not only horrendous, but you can see that it is unconscionable. And so the emphasis then, of course, is how do you change these institutions, and how can you make the greater assault on the problem of poverty? Well, I think that one of the ways that you can best do that, of course, is research and get a better picture of the issue. But you can also have an up-close look at it. And an up-close look is one where you are involved intensively, involved for 7 full days. And if any of you have ever been to day camp, summer camp, then you know that's a long time. It's a face-to-face situation. It's something that you live moment by moment, and you just don't get away from it. As a matter of fact, you don't want to get away from it. And so the most intensive way of learning then is looking at something which may very well be a school situation, a neighborhood. It may be a health issue. It may be a host of things, but you're looking at it, and then you come back and you get a chance to talk about it in a way that you might never have perceived it, because what you're looking at then is a situation from multiple eyes. And this is a situation not only of 7 full days away, but you're looking at a proposition from the eyes of 10 or perhaps 11 other colleagues who will help you to see that, hey, I could never have seen it that way by myself. So it's something to really understand poverty and to understand it in some depth. I can tell you this because I served as the director of community development for the Peace Corps for all of Latin America. I did that. It was the first in this endeavor. And having done it, it's no surprise to me why we see the population that we see on the southern border of Texas. I can, in class, I can tell you why that's so. I can tell you what I see as some of the solutions to it all. But I saw it from the ground level. Also, for 5 years, I served as a consultant to the indigenous population in Southwest America, and the situation there among the indigenous people is very impactful, and the ramifications of it, of course, are poverty immensely. And I think that it's one thing to read about that. It's another thing to be there. It's another thing to be at a tribal meeting. It's another thing to sit and talk with the people about what their hopes and what their thoughts are about their situation. And for you to sit there and try to help plan, help to give individuals insight as to what kinds of moves that they can make as a result of their situation. So, in the 7 days, you just simply are going to encounter some life-wrenching experiences, because you're going to be talking to the people. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to tell you that food stamps are available, and this is how the allocation is for food stamps, and you can assume as you're reading this that, well, yes, that's true. It's not what I would like, but hey, it's sufficient. It's another thing for a mother who is feeding 4 kids with the allocation that she has, and then telling you the difficulty. And you're looking at her eyeball to eyeball. That's very different from being in academia in the very comfortable room that you're in, and reading about it and musing over it and speculating, as opposed to being right there on the scene. So I want you to just look at the different neighborhoods. I want you to see how situations are so entrapful to get out is almost impossible. I want you to learn how to be strategists. I want you to learn how to be able to analyze and look at how communities can and need to be changed, how institutions can and need to be changed. And again, let me emphasize again, more and more and more, that the learning and universities is maximized by the impact of how students take in that information, how they ingest it, how they digest it, how they dispense it among themselves, and how in groups they actually learn how to be a better self. They become a multiple self. If you have 10 people in a group, then you're going to come out at least with 10 different other ways of saying something that you would not have seen it before. So how can I tell you that? I can tell you that because I was the founder of group work at St. Louis University, where I first stopped in this town. And I can tell you that because, again, I've served as camp director for many young people who come from the urban core, and I've been the supervisor of group work for such populations. And also, while I'm just saying some of these things, I came into the profession of social work by working with street gangs. And so I have a little idea about what it's all about, working with individuals. But working with groups is something that just is a multiplier factor to all of this. And so here you are, one person in a group of 10 others, and every moment of the day, you're talking about, what is this that I just saw? You know, it's a difference between seeing something and just looking at it and having it parceled out and given back to you. And when that's happening, you say, well, I didn't see that. You know, how did you see that? Well, it's all perspectives, multiplied and magnified. That's what education is. And then coming up with what's the best, what's the most logical, what's the most feasible way to make a significant difference. Not a difference, significant difference. You didn't come here just to make a difference. You came here to make a significant one. And I can promise you this. Well, I almost started to say, if you don't have that experience when you leave the immersion, I'll give you your money back, but I'm not, I don't have that kind of authority. But I can guarantee you that if what I'm telling you is not true, you come and knock on my door. I'm Brown 114. Come knock on my door and say, hey, Kirkland, Professor Kirkland, I don't know if I got all of my money's worth, and I'll reach in my pocket. Okay. So what I want to do at this point is just let you talk with me, open it up. I have a person who has been with me for almost 2 years, Zach, and he's a paid customer, okay, and he doesn't get any more when he leaves this session if he says some kind things. But anyway, he's a person who lived it all the way, and I'd like for him to maybe just share some things and maybe analyze and give more specificity to some of the things that I've said. Can you do that, Zach?
Yeah, sure thing, Professor. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, the immersion course, it's pretty eye-opening. I don't want to give too much of it away because so much of it is just the process of being there and, digesting through, like Professor was saying, with your peers. Lots of debriefs about what you all encountered throughout the day. And I think this course gives a amazing opportunity to build out the educational foundation of your learning experience at the Brown School. So, and I guess not to say that in such a fancy way, but it kind of just allows you to perceive things from very different perspectives that you might not have had coming in, and coming out of the course, you will see and process whatever other courses you have differently at the Brown School. So, you can notice that I took it in the winter. And so my first semester, I had my, my required courses that everybody has to take coming in. And then I met Professor Kirkland after I had already registered. And so I was able to take the winter one. And, it really changed the way I view the whole educational process at the Brown School. And it just gives you, the immersion exposes you to like a well of information. Whether your focus, if you're coming in and your focus is on racial inequities, or if it's on housing, if it's on economic development, if it's on wanting to help people who are experiencing homelessness, youth development, education, the wide variety of different kinds of focuses and interventions in social work, there's exposure to that in this course. And it's kind of allows you to not only experience, I can't say actually experience it because you're not experiencing those things, but secondhand experiencing those different social situations, and then seeing how they're connected to one another, and this interconnection within community and within society. And it really helps not only, seeing and showing that there is systemic racism within, a city or a community, a country, but also the institutions that make up those systems. And so I think this class is just an amazing opportunity. I know I've said that a few times, but to just talk one-on-one with Professor Kirkland and about the different experiences. And even every time I talk with him, I think I come out with a slightly different understanding, even if it's of the same topic and it's a conversation we've had before. And talking with Shirley and all the great work that Shirley's done with community in and around St. Louis. The St. Louis metropolitan area is just a really great place for this class, because you have this wide range of the history of systemic and institutionalized racism in the St. Louis area. And, this course dives into that history, but then it brings it up into the modern time and helps you see where the course that we're on is heading, you know, in the next 5 or 10 years. And that's probably enough for now. Professor, let me know if you want me to cover anything else.
No, you're doing well, Zach. Shirley, want to make a comment or two?
Yeah, thanks, Professor, and thank you, Zach. I will say ditto to everything that both of you have said. I guess the only thing I'd like to leave with the students is that, you know, you come into this field, you're here because you are concerned and you probably want to make a difference and you want to do all those great things. And this is the best preparation for, you know, the next 2 years and the education that you're going to receive, as well as your future and what you will be doing in your careers. One thing I can guarantee you, and I underline what Professor Kirkland said, when you leave this course after those 7 days, you will never be the same again, and you will never see communities the same way that you have seen them when you know, at the time that you come into the course, because you cultivate your perspective, but in cultivating, you know, you may change, you expand your perspective. You come into it, there are going to be things that you're going to have to unlearn, because all of your life you've been taught things in a different, you know, in a certain way, and you've been taught certain things, and those things are deeply embedded within you. And so, you know, over the course of those 7 intense days, you go through a change within yourself. Your whole ideology changes and expands. And this will no doubt have a tremendous, you know, it has a impact on your career here at Brown and your career as professionals. One of the things that Professor Kirkland always says, and as you get to know him, you'll learn that he has a lot of wisdom and a lot of little sayings. But one of the things that he always says is that how you perceive is how you proceed. And so then, you know, coming in and being exposed to all of the negatives and the impact that institutionalized racism has, being able to come in and see it and see the impact of it on communities, on neighborhoods, on the families and the people and the businesses and things that live in those communities, you know, will no doubt change you and give you a different perspective. And then this, you know, you will have you're blessed, and it's always better, I think, if students are able to come at the beginning of their career at Brown versus later on. It's good if you get into the course anytime, but if you can get it toward the beginning, because it does give you that survey of what social economic development is, and you're able to see it. You know, I remember I was a student of Professor Kirkland's and have been from my undergraduate days and on through my graduate days, and I'm still with him and I'm still his student. And because as Zach said, every time you have a conversation with him, you come away with a little bit more. But, you know, just being able to, I remember one of the first questions I had was, what is social economic development? And so he said, well, I'm going to show you. And he took me into a community, and I was able to really see what it is. We will examine all of the forces and the factors that are existing, the economic, structural, and so forth that help to work against communities. And so, you know, this is an experience that you will never have another experience like this, but it will shape the rest of your lives. I guarantee you on that. I've done a lot of work in communities, and I've done some consulting. I've done some social and economic development, and we'll be able to go through and look at some of the areas that I've actually worked in. So I don't want to hog the conversation, so I'm gonna stop there.
Okay, Shirley, appreciate that. Let me just give you, as we're talking here, what occurs to me is that it's abstract to you at this point. What on earth is social economic development? Because this may be the first time that you're talking to somebody who has an idea of what it is, and obviously you're going to get the impact of it in the curriculum. But I'm going to give you an example of what what I'm currently doing, and then you examine that along with me. This is happening in the last 6 months. What I'm telling you happened in the last 6 months. I'm working with 2 people on the east side, and it's on the east side. It means on the east side of the river, and it means for you it would be East St. Louis. But here I am working on the east side with 2 people, and they're helping 3 communities become one, to merge and become one. Now, I need not tell you, if any of you from small communities, that if you have a small community, you really you have a lesser than many communities, simply because the money's not there, and so here are 3 communities become one. That's a process. That in itself is a process for people to give up the name of their town and to become one. You'd be surprised. It's a process for schools to change. Okay, all of that. It's more than you can imagine, in a bundle. But I've been asked to, and I'm doing it now, to consult the Board of Education there. The school system is probably somewhere around 4,000 to 4,500 when it's settled. So I'm working with the Board of Education from K through 12. And then I'm asked to be the economic developer for this new town of about 40,000+ people to help put the economic floor under it. And I can tell you right now, this town, these 3 towns were listed as the last at the very bottom of academia in the state. Okay, now I could, it would be a semester, I can tell you, what the plan and all of that. But the point is that a social worker, consulting the school, consulting the city government, and organizing the city. That's social economic development. Now, that you don't do that, the day you graduate. I want you to be aware of that. But that's social economic development. Do you know how many lives that you impact? Do you know how many generations you are impacting? That's social economic development. So, how would you get to study with me? Because this is the bad news. The bad news is that I teach another class called seminar. It's a seminar in East St. Louis. And one of the ways that you can get into that class is to be advanced standing. Another way that you can get into that class, and incidentally, you're gonna have to, I'll have to interview you. You have to interview, I'll have to interview you. You don't get in there because, you know, you need 3 hours. That's another stop somewhere. You get in there with my interviewing you, and the total that gets in there is 15. So, you know, we are together because we want to be together. We're together because you want to be a person who is top notch in what we're talking about. You know, I consult mayors. You know, I expect you to do that. I expect you to do what I do. So, you know, we don't have time, you know, to do anything but what is best and what is paramount. That is what has to happen. So, so that's the bad news and the good news. And the best news is that the community will be looking for you. I also have practicum that I supervise. I supervise practicum students. And I have one practical student this semester who is working with a mayor. I have practicum students who help individuals to get into elected office. And one of the things I would tell you that I will share with you, since I've been talking about schools, is I've been in elected offices. I've been on school boards, elected on school, and so forth and so on. So I'm saying to you, you know, if you're thinking about an immersion, and if you're thinking about doing things like I do, then you're thinking about getting into some deep water. Is that right, Zach? Okay, so I'm gonna leave some time for you to ask questions now. Come on, the water's fine.
Seeing some good chatter in the chat, and you addressed a lot of it in what you just shared, Dr. Kirkland, or Professor Kirkland, about just the need to be in touch with you if folks want to pursue this opportunity to take the course. So if you are someone who is interested in the immersion class, building relationships is the most important thing at the Brown School, the most important things you can do at the Brown School. So getting in touch with Professor Kirkland is going to be stop number one. But if you have any other questions, feel free to unmute yourself so that those who are watching the recording can have the benefit of hearing your question, or you can write it in the chat and I'd be happy to read it aloud.
Well, let me ask you a question then, since you guys are in stall land out there.
I think you got one question, Professor.
Oh, okay. All right. Because you know me, Zach. If you don't ask me, I'll come after you.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Thank you for all the information. It was fascinating. I was curious, if you aren't able to get into the immersion courses, I know that you said it's kind of competitive and there's only a certain amount of people that can get in. So if you're not one of the people who can get in, what are your what's your advice for still having like a similar experience or still learning about the poverty culture or poverty in general without having that direct immersion, I guess, to the school?
Good question. My answer is there's no equivalent. Doesn't exist. And that has nothing to do with the fact that I teach it. And it has to do with you're living it. You know, so now how can you do second best? Okay. All right. Well, this is what you can do. And most students never know this, is that you can take what is called independent study. Now, if you were with me and you wanted to take independent study, let's just put it way out in the field, and you wanted to be a mayor of a town, 15,000 people, I could take you and show you how to do that with a mayor who you could follow and shadow. Now, at where you are in school now, that's the most incredible thing in the world. How could I ever be a mayor? Well, the answer to that is go and look at people who are mayors. And you won't be so amazed at the fact that you could be one. So I'm saying to you, and this is, I sat where you are sitting 100 years ago. I'm saying to you that you can be and do anything that you want to do and be, but you can't come late. You can't come into my office in the third semester and say, I want to be, no, you missed, you got on a boat, you took a ride, you were on a train, you went, you did all of that. You need, and you say, well, that's not fair because I'm just getting in school. I don't know. Well, let me ask you two questions, because these are the questions that I ask, whether you'll see me or not, okay? First question is, why are people poor? Okay. The second question is, how do you help poor people? How you answer either one of those questions determine whether you'll see me. It sounds like the same question, doesn't it? No. What did Shirley just say? How you perceive is how you proceed.
And can I add to this real quick, Professor?
Mhm.
And I know I said it in the chat, but since we're recording, I'll say it for everyone. Professor Kirkland does a really good job of making himself available to students. I know he said it earlier, like, stop by my office if you want that refund. Like, his door is pretty much always open if he's in there. So, if you really wanted to do the summer immersion coming in your first semester and you don't get in for whatever reason, I encourage you to stop by his office during that first semester once or twice and just sit down and talk with him for a little bit. And then, hopefully we'll do a winter immersion and then you've got another opportunity to get in there. But if you take the effort to seek him out, you can usually get those conversations going and he'll make the time for you.
Hi, can people hear me? Great. Okay, awesome. Hi, one, thank you so much for speaking with us today, Professor Kirkland. I'm super interested in this topic. I actually currently work for a DC-based think tank. My portfolio area looks specifically at the intersection of poverty and criminal justice, but I've noticed that we aren't engaged with people who are the communities that are actually affected by these things, and that's why I want to get my MSW to learn how to actually work with communities. But I am curious, just in the era of the pandemic, what the immersion seminars look like, especially for students who are looking to be actively engaged with communities, especially communities that are experience poverty and racism and just all those things that go together, ableism, and how the pandemic has made more apparent how difficult it is, or just how the pandemic has particularly disproportionately affected those communities, and kind of showing how like the ways that people used to engage aren't as readily available anymore, especially with, you know, public health measures recommended. So I'm just curious what engagement with communities looks like these days. Ideally, people will be able to gather in person, but just thinking about like types of networks that people would typically tap into to engage with others within their communities, and how things like, you know, internet deserts and, you know, lack of access to technology and transportation to, you know, meet one another might be afflicting these communities. I'm just curious about that. If any of that made sense, I can clarify. Sorry, I'm rambling.
It makes sense. You just ask a half semester question. But
Sorry.
it makes plenty sense. So, but you know, well, just for instance, right now, the courses that I teach, my emphasis is not on answers to questions. My real emphasis is for you to literally, and it's been said by both Zach and Shirley, you come here for a mind change. That, you know, that's what this is. And I don't, you know, I'm teaching to plastic right now. You know, I see you, but you know, I can't catch your inferences. I can't hear your grunts. I can't, you know, I don't hear your mind rolling, you know, when I'm saying something. And I can't tell when, you know, you are puzzled about something. I can do all of that if you're in my seminar, you see. And I come here, I didn't come to teach classes, I come to teach people. And you know, both Zach and Shirley, I tell you, if you miss one of my classes, you know, nobody can take notes for you. Because what I've had to say, you know, I say and I patch holes, you know, in your psyche. So nobody can come and say, this is what you needed to know and you should have been there. You know, you have to be there. But you know, if we're talking about the, you know, COVID and so forth and so on, there are ways that you can do a lot of things. For instance, there's a student right now that I have who is attending council meetings, and she happens to be right now in Maine, you know, and she attends other meetings and so forth and so on, but they're like this. So you know, you can approximate, you can duplicate, you can replicate, you can do a lot of things. But that student still, because you know, when I teach, I don't give an exam. You know, there's no exam. What I do, I spend an hour with each student for an exam. An hour, you know. I'm not caught up with papers. You know what? You know, 40-page paper. You know, when you get out in real life, it'll be a half page. That's what somebody wants to know. What is it that I need to do, and how can I best do it? You know, no Sears catalogs. You know, so the point is that how can you learn these things? You can learn them, you know, for instance, I'm going to do a seminar with 5 students who want to learn about cities, how to effectively intervene with cities. They want to know different things, but there's something generic that they have to know. And I bring 5 of them together for that generic piece. And then they go back into their individual arrangements for other things that they know. But you know, you can't teach what you don't know. And so if you ask me about, how to change institutions, I also was a strategist in the civil rights movement. I thought I'd drop that on you. So, I've seen a few things out there. You understand? So what you want to learn, you can learn at distance. You can learn by, phone call, but you have to have couched your question so that you can get an atomic answer. You can get a sparse answer, but you want atomic answers. You want something that gives you impact information that you can use. So anybody who's been through it, who's seen it, who can tell you, you need to talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. These are the questions you have to ask. Once you learn how to ask questions, you can do anything. Plus, it's simply a matter of how do you pull the information out of somebody else's cranium. And then the next question is, what do you do with it? Just because you have information doesn't give you, any wisdom. You have to have a way of using that information so that it does make the significant difference, not only in the person's life, but in the institution. Oh, I forgot to tell you. If you don't have courage, you're in the wrong profession.
Thank you, Professor Kirkland.
Oh, it's over?
It is over.
I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, I know. I think we could all stay here and listen to you impart your wisdom. But I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day and your schedule to share just a little of your story with us and share with admitted students the ways that they can get involved in the work that you do. Thank you, Zach and Shirley, for being here as well to talk about your experiences. And for those of you who are watching the recorded version, if you want more information, would like to get connected with any of the folks here, you can email brownadmissions@wustl.edu, and we would be happy to connect you with Professor Kirkland or Zach or Shirley. They are all three available and happy to talk to you. So thank you all again so much for joining.